So let me just get this right. Rear-wheel drive, manual, turbocharged, lightweight, 993 with modern-day technology and dynamics. That's effectively it.
Right.
So what I'm hearing here is if Porsche made a 993 GT2 RS, this would kind of be it. So you actually made it then?
Yes, we did.
you actually made it.
Just in time.
This is Pete. Pete's from Guntherwerks, and I was really fortunate a few months ago, really, to see the renders of this. And it's important for me to start with the renders because when I first saw it, with 99% of cars that you see, they're like concept form. You're like, yeah, that's nice, but what's it gonna be like? You made the render. Like, you made it, man.
Yeah.
As
close to production as possible, yes.
So we were really fortunate a few months ago, back in the UK, to drive your coupe. And that in itself, naturally aspirated, high revving, air-cooled, blew me away. What was the journey from there to here to decide to turn it up to 11?
Well, you know, from the onset, we always had production plans to develop the naturally aspirated coupe, and then we always intended on releasing the Speedster, which was a very different driving experience from the coupe. And the turbo was always in the plan as well. So we always wanted a forced induction vehicle that took advantage of all of the mechanical grip on this car and all of the chassis development we did. So, you know, a lot of people go, there's just way too much grip on the coupe and Speedster. Why did you need this? Well, this is your answer right here. It's the twin turbo.
Obviously, this is the very early stages of this car. Shortly, we're going to reintroduce you to Amjad, who anyone who saw the drive of the coupe will be familiar with, because you've done some very trick stuff on the engine, which I implore you to stick around for, because when we say this application has been reserved strictly for race cars, it's no exaggeration, right? Yeah. What is in the back of here is truly special. But do you have any top line figures in terms of the ballpark of what this thing will weigh and the kind of horsepower it'll ultimately have?
So it'll be roughly around 2,700 pounds. I don't know what that quite works out in kilos.
Okay.
But it's going to have about 700 horsepower in track mode. So 600 standard, 700 horsepower with 2,700 pounds. So the power to weight ratio is, you know, quite good.
There's definitely GT1 elements of styling and aero inspiration in this car, right?
Yeah, we definitely looked at the racing heritage cars in the past and took functional and design elements from those cars and applied it to this car. So it's no coincidence. There's a lot of racing elements to this car, both from a performance and design aesthetic point of view. You can see right there from the hood, that's one of the most obvious things that you see. This is actually a functional front duct. It carries air directly from the middle of the front intake opening in the bumper and scoops it right out here to create downforce.
So this is a direct sort of S-duct channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's drawing air in here.
If I had basically dropped this cup under here and there was no mesh, the cup would come out of the front bumper, right?
When I say there's a lot of carbon on this car, there's a lot of carbon you can see, but every body panel is also carbon, right?
Correct, yeah. Right. Every body panel is carbon fiber with the exception of the doors.
So, and that's obviously a big in part to the weight saving.
Mainly for weight saving. So it's really there, I think we save approximately 500 pounds of weight compared to a standard car. So all of that is a result of replacing steel panels with carbon fiber. It's not there for aesthetic reasons, it's purely to save weight.
So everything on the car really, obviously it looks great, but is that more of a byproduct of the result of the performance and the aero and the downforce you're trying to achieve? It's like a functional project.
Yeah, so our focus is on functional performance. That's kind of the word we use here in the office. We don't design it and then try to make it functional.
Sure.
We make it functional and then try and do our best to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible.
You've nailed that bit. Honestly, I can't take my eyes off it, but there's not a bad angle on this thing. There is not a bad angle.
Hope not.
It's so cool. We are like a couple of days away from the unveil at Car Week. How long has this journey been?
So this journey's been, I mean, in my head, it's been over 10 years. I've always fantasized about, you know, creating a car like this in my head. And,
phenomenal.
You know, 5 years ago is really where we started the actual physical journey, and it started with the coupe, the speedster, and the turbo. But this is our 5-year anniversary today, so it's a special moment for us to come back to Monterey Car Week and unveil the turbo 5 years later.
Do you know how insane that is? 5 years to this is unbelievable.
It's been a long 5 years. Let's just put it that way.
I know, but that's like ridiculous that this is. So this is technically your third car, right?
Correct.
You've had coupe, speedster,
right,
naturally aspirated, and now this is your third car.
Yeah, forced induction.
So all of those have come out of 5 years worth of work.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's bonkers, mate.
Yeah.
That's absolutely unbelievable. it's so good.
And then we've got a completely resculpted front fender. From the front, you can't really tell, but once you get behind the front fender, you will see a very, very racing-inspired vertical vent that helps excavate air from the tires, the wheel wells. And then carrying on to the side skirts. So we've had to redesign the side skirts because it has to somehow connect to the vertical vent on the front fender. So we've got a deeper side skirt that we've designed that protrudes out more and is more aerodynamic. That leads into the rear quarter panel. It's a brand new rear quarter panel, and it's got the rear intake duct formed into it. And these two intake ducts do very, very different things, which something that Amjad will cover over his technical overview. We've got a very, very subtle double bubble carbon fiber roof, something that you sort of have to look for, but we want to make it as subtle as possible, and that's really there for crash helmet clearance.
Space.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very GT1-esque.
Yeah,
it looks like the midsection of the car is almost recessed within its own flares. It's got so much depth to it.
It's been tough designing this vent because technically the front and rear quarter panels, the fenders, are both the same width as our coupe and our speedster, but we had to visually trick the eye to allow the vent and make it look as organic as possible while making it more functional, because we don't want to go wider than our current coupes, because we've done so much chassis development around the last two cars that we don't want to change that. So the width is the same, but there's just more aero and cooling integrated into these new parts. You see this whale tail right here based on the needs for cooling and downforce. So you can see little elements here and little elements here. This is all for cooling. It feeds directly into the flat fan. And this little lip here that basically adds more downforce. Forced induction, when you have 700 horsepower, James, you need cooling. You can never have enough cooling when you're having a twin turbo 700 horsepower car, especially air cooled.
We'll introduce you to the engine shortly, because there is some magic happening under here. There's a nice story behind this X, right?
Yeah.
Come on, share the story. Because
So,
stories are everything.
So internally, the story is the X is our journey to sort of overcome. When we first started this project, we've been turned down and not really accepted by the community because of the idea that we wanted to build our own air-cooled Porsche 911, and there's obviously other companies doing it. And it's been a long uphill battle the last 5 years. There's a lot of naysayers and a lot of people that doubted what we can do. And the X is a representation of the fact that we are an underdog and we're fighting an uphill battle. So that's something that we actually even carry on to the center caps that you can see here if you look up close.
Fantastic, man.
So it's sort of repeated throughout the car. That's sort of our internal inspiration to sort of say, hey, we don't give up. We can make it through. We can do it and overcome the naysayers. So that's sort of our internal story that I've never shared before.
And you absolutely smashed it. So top work, man. A minute ago, I was genuinely saying there is no bad angle on this car. I can't decide which is my favorite, 3/4, front, rear, back, I don't know, but the rear of this thing is a whole different ballgame.
The rear is a much more dramatic change over the coupe and the speedster. It's a very open designed rear bumper. So it's really designed around, again, functionality, and it's to excavate as much heat out of the engine bay because that twin turbo is going to get very, very hot. You've got the two exhaust tailpipes and a integrated flat rear diffuser that's very, very functional. It actually travels all the way to the underbody of the car. Yeah.
These exhaust tips don't look like they're easy to make. Are you 3D printing this?
Yes, those shapes are only doable by doing 3D prints. So this particular exhaust tip, standard will be 3D printed Inconel, and we have an option to make a 3D printed titanium. Yeah.
Not playing around.
Yeah.
Highly cool.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we are going to share soon is a factory walk and talk of the Guntherwerks HQ. And one of the reasons that we feel that we want to share that is because of the amount of engineering, development, production, and assembly that takes place all under one roof in-house is incredible. And we just think it's important to share that story because what you do here is amazing. The light. Now, in the world of OEM production cars, to homologate your own light is a really big deal. Like
right.
it's a big thing. And you guys create this in-house.
Yeah, we tried to create a taillight design that was from far away. When you look at it, it looks like a standard 993, but you get up close and you're like, oh, there's something a little bit different about it. And we applied some three-dimensional techniques on the design so that it's not just flat across. And it's a single bar red LED. The rear taillights, I'll put this on just so you guys can see.
Oh, look at that.
So that's sort of, we want to be very respectful to the original air-cooled analog look and feel of it. So we want to try and keep and preserve as much of the original Porsche 911 that the factory built and pay respect to that. So, that's sort of the inspiration.
So these are a split between carbon and a magnesium inner, right?
Right.
And these are 18-inch.
Right.
And these could be the lightest 18 inches in the world.
Yes, I mean, these are 18 by 11 in the front, 18 by 13 in the rear. Carbon fiber barrel, so we worked directly with Dimag. We wanted an 18-inch wheel, but we wanted it to be step-lip. And unfortunately, when you're building carbon fiber, anytime you have a 90-degree angle, it creates a point of weakness.
Right.
So how do we design a lip that is step-lip without actually having an angle? So this is sort of the first carbon fiber barrel that is almost like a salad bowl. It actually tapers in.
Wow.
It's not a straight lip, it tapers in, and it goes into a smaller face, the face design we want. And we had to do a lot of testing for about 2 years with Dimag to design a magnesium center that was safe and meeting our performance requirements. So this is, sort of the fruit of our labor the last 2 years.
One of the things that I'm picking up on, and this is over the years, not just right now, that when something has been designed for purpose to its extreme, it always ends up looking better anyway than something that was just dreamt up to look good. It's like this form follows function thing.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like, right?
These are the Brembo CCMRs. So the difference between Brembo carbon ceramics and CCMRs is a very big distinction that a lot of people don't know. So carbon ceramics are built using a mold where they take fibers of carbon fiber and ceramic and press it into a mold. So it's like molded rotors. It comes out very, very quickly, right? But it's not true carbon. These rotors are literally layers of carbon fiber fabric that are like applied layer by layer and then cooked in an oven. So the amount of time involved with laying up the carbon fiber for the rotors. These rotors take 8 months to make from Brembo, 8 months per rotor, as opposed to like 30 seconds.
Sure,
right,
yeah.
And it's essentially, Brembo looked at how do we take Formula One brakes and literally put it in a production car where it's drivable, it doesn't squeak, it doesn't dust, and this is the work of what Brembo did. And there's very few cars out in the road right now that have CCMRs. One of them would be the McLaren Senna, and more recently the Huracan STOs. But CCMRs are on a different level. They perform on the track. We've taken it on a track, beat it up for 8 to 10 hours, and there is absolutely no brake fade.
To try and maybe set some early context as to what the performance of this thing might be like, you guys set quite an incredible lap time with the naturally aspirated coupe around Laguna, right?
Right.
Just help set context as to where you placed that time.
So we did a 130.99, and we're like just behind a McLaren P1 and a 918 Spider or Huracan Performante. We are obviously with
Yeah.
the great thing was the coupe had incredible mechanical grip, but it only had 430 horsepower.
Sure.
So there was a little bit of a handicap because there's not enough power on the straightaways. With this thing, with the same mechanical grip and 700 horsepower, I mean, you could sort of imagine the numbers that we would get. So we're really looking forward to taking this back to Laguna Seca, and hopefully next year we can take it to the ring.
So you're air-cooled, naturally aspirated, I mean, obviously highly modded, but based on a 993, was within the realms of a McLaren P1.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I have any more context for you.
Pretty close to the 993.
That is incredible, right? 0.27 of a second off, 0.27 of a second off. A P1, man.
Yeah.
This is going to rip. It's going to be ridiculous. Right, so on the outside, highly cool, you've developed your own seats on the inside as well.
Right.
And you're particularly proud of these because these are using a very trick process in order to achieve something like this, right?
Right. Key differences between this and the other cars is our Gen 2 carbon bucket seats that we've done a lot of ergonomic studies on, and this is actually a hollow carbon fiber seat shell. The entire seat is formed out of a mold, and then what we will do is we will apply the cushions on top of the carbon seats, because what happens is foam cushions actually add quite a bit of weight. So you want to minimize as much as possible the amount of cushion surface area on the seat because it's adding weight to the car, but at the same time trying to make it as comfortable as possible so that you don't want to get out of the car after 30 minutes driving it. And all these seat cushions are obviously adjustable, so we would, just like when you get a tailor-made suit, we would actually measure the customer's body shape and comfort levels and basically design the seat cushions around their personal criteria. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's every seat will be a little bit different and tailor-made to that client. Some of the other things we see is like our new carbon fiber hollow steering wheel with the new multi-function buttons there. So they're right there. Before they used to be on the dash or in the center console. So we brought that back into the steering wheel so customers have quick access to those. On the left side, we have the nose lift button, which you'll need all the time, especially because the car is so low. And we have a track button on this turbo, which will go from 600 to 700 horsepower and put it on a different tune. That also goes in package with our new center console. So it now has a magnetic charger right there that you can take off right there, yes.
How cool is that?
Yeah. And you could put your iPad mini in there and have all of the creature comforts of technology such as Waze, Apple Music, Spotify.
Brilliant.
All right, Amjad.
All right, Amjad is back.
James.
Pleasure to see you on the other side of the pond, sir. So, Amjad's gonna run us through, he's like technical maestro here.
When we did our roadmap, when we launched in 2017, this was on the roadmap.
Right.
So this has been getting designed from then.
For a long time.
So it's not like we've just put it together. This was designed.
Sure.
So what we did is we perfected the chassis on Coupe and Speedster, all leading to what this car was going to be capable of doing.
You know, that makes a lot of sense now because you can give the Speedster and the Coupe 100% throttle in any gear and it just deals with it.
Yeah,
you know,
it handles
got
it, right?
so much mechanical grip.
Yeah.
You know.
And we got asked that. We're like, wow, the car's got so much mechanical. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We just didn't tell people that, well, this is why, right?
Okay.
So now the cat's out of the bag. So this vent on the side, I think this is really important. So this has a two-fold job.
Here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, that hot air that's going through the oil coolers, that's coming through those front bumpers. First of all, it's a very, very efficient and quick way of exiting that heat to exit that bumper space at the front. Secondly, it creates an air curtain that bypasses the wheels. And from an aerodynamic perspective, that's very, very efficient as well. And again, the front fenders, Peter touched on it, all the turbulent air that gets caught up in the wheel well, that is one of the most aerodynamically efficient ways of getting rid of it. Hence why, if you look at the racing cars, that's where they all had it. It's a vented rear fender. That takes in air, if you look at it, it's split. It takes in air for two different things. One is for the intake. So it goes in through an airbox, and then straight into the turbo. So this is the shortest and most efficient route to the turbo, which means, and the byproduct of that is faster throttle response, less turbo lag, and quicker spool time. And secondly, and we'll see this when we look at the engine, traditionally Porsche turbos have always been intercooled. This is charge cooled. So that's, instead of an air-to-air intercooler, this is a water-to-air intercooler. And a water-to-air intercooler is 17 times more efficient than an air-to-air intercooler.
Wow.
And with the power that the engine's going to develop, that was the route to take. It's not like this hasn't been done before. Porsche did this on the race cars. But in those days, they used to use water or coolant like you would put in your radiator, right?
Yeah.
Again, technology. So even the coolant that you use in your charge coolers now, from a thermal point of view, is so efficient that you can put some in a beaker and you can put your finger in it. And you count to 5.
Yes.
And you pull your finger out, and the tip of your finger is cold.
As a stationary fluid.
As a stationary fluid. So we're using that kind of
That's remarkable.
chemical technology within a charge cooling environment to enhance the cooling even more.
Wow.
So this is what you've been waiting for.
This is what I've been waiting for. The last and only time I've seen a flat fan was on something like a 917.
Yeah.
It's like reserved for Le Mans cars, reserved for the racetrack, certainly.
Yeah.
You've got to put it on a street legal car.
Yeah.
How much hassle was that?
Well, believe it or not, what we did was, Porsche did this for their race cars for a reason. And the reason is, this is massively more efficient at cooling the engine than a vertical fan.
Okay.
So one of the issues with a vertical fan, amongst many others, the air comes in and it goes through 90 degrees and goes over the barrels and cools the pistons, right? Because of the nature of the shape of it, pistons 1 and 4, which are the two rearmost pistons, always run slightly hotter. Right. So when these guys, when they were running the race cars, especially at places like Le Mans where you're running for 24 hours, the flat fan cools all the cylinders evenly.
Okay.
So they all get the same amount of cooling. So it's way more efficient. And the other thing is, from a flat fan perspective, is in terms of flow. So to give you an idea, to keep it relevant to this particular car, a 993 fan at 6,100 RPM delivers 1,010 litres per second of air to the engine. A flat fan with 9 blades like this has delivers 2,400 litres of air at the same engine speed, right? So you're more than double in terms of the airflow going over it. Now, when you've got an engine, obviously when you use forced induction, you turbocharge an engine, they run a lot hotter.
Sure.
Okay. Now with a water-cooled engine, it's not too much of a hassle because it's water-cooled. But with an air-cooled engine, you need to maximize that airflow. So this is the best way to do it. And I know it's not been done on a road car. And then there's a lot of detractors from it. They'll go, yeah, well, they use 30 horsepower. Again, it's all relative. So give you an example. The amount of power that the fan uses rises exponentially by engine speed. So it doesn't use, everybody's giving it, but they use 30 horsepower. They only use 30 horsepower when they're at full chat. This engine is going to rev. Are you ready for this?
Come on.
To 7,500 RPM.
For a turbocharged engine?
It's twin turbo and it's going to rev to 7,500 RPM. So at 7,500 RPM, this is going to use about 35 horsepower, right? Yeah. But that's 5% of the 700 horsepower that it makes. Sure. You're never going to feel that.
Yeah, and it's only a full chat.
Yeah.
Right.
But the upsides of it, even cooling across all of the cylinders, which in this application are very, very important. And the other thing people tend to forget is, not only does this cool the barrels and the pistons, right? That 65% of the airflow goes to cool that. The other 35% goes to cool the heads. And in this application, in a turbo application, that is extremely, extremely important because they're going to get very, very hot. The route of the air, so on a vertical fan, it comes in from the deck lid, goes through 90 degrees through the fan, then it goes through another 90 degrees, right, where it gets spread over the 6 cylinders. The air comes in and it goes straight down. It's way more efficient in terms of the distribution of air and hence cooling. So that's why we went for a flat fan solution. Again, everything's there. It's there for a reason. It's not just there from an aesthetics point of view.
But it looks awesome as well.
Oh, it looks great. Yeah, it does. I'm not going to say it doesn't look awesome.
It just looks.
And the other thing that's going to be really, really cool about the car is these things make a very, very distinct noise in compared to a vertical fan.
Okay.
So this is going to sound amazing. We're using individual throttle bodies just like we're using in our coupe. So this is in it. It's got ITBs on it. You see these inlet pipes here? They come straight from the turbo. So the turbo's right there. So remember when we spoke about Yeah, so remember when we spoke about the inlet coming through that vent at the side?
Yeah.
So the reason we're doing that is, right, it's the most direct route to the turbo, faster spool up, less turbo lag, etc., etc. Well, it comes from there and it comes straight up here. They don't have to be convoluted, they don't have to join, they don't have to go through a single intercooler and then come back out and then go into an inlet manifold, which then feeds all of the throttles, right? So they're all fighting over, you know, which throttle's going to get the air. Each turbo only feeds 3 cylinders.
Brilliant.
And it comes from there, straight in there, into that inlet manifold,
Cooled.
straight through the charge cooler where it's cooled, straight through the individual throttle bodies, and straight down. And boom, there's the power. So we've got 700 horsepower, minimum of 560 pounds-foot of torque, and that's going to go through manual, 6-speed manual gearbox, and it's 2,700 pounds, which is 1,225 kilograms, right? So can you make, like, it's like saying an E30 M3 with 700 horsepower, right?
Yeah. So while we're here, we can also see the reservoirs of Jrz suspension.
Now, you've seen this before from Coupe.
Yeah.
This one's a bit different. So we're now running Jrz's, what they call their active suspension. So it's computer controlled. There's control, and that computer is controlled by an app. It's not adaptive in the sense of, you know, you go soft, medium, hard. It's truly adaptive. They've developed this algorithm, and they can adjust in 25 milliseconds.
So they're adjusting in real time.
In real time.
As
So
it's like
they
reading the road effectively.
Yeah, so they react to the way the shock's moving and they adjust in real time. And it makes a massive difference to the way the car drives and the way the car handles. Plus, we can program a lot of that element. So in track mode, there'll be a specific suspension setting for it where it will be track focused. So it will, you know, we'll make those changes at the same speed, but the changes will be different where it will give you optimum track performance.
Yeah, I can tell you're excited about this, mate.
Oh,
it's
mate.
Brilliant.
Well, it's been, like Pete said, so this is not a flash in the pan. It's not we decided to do this today.
Yeah.
When we launched, this was in the pipeline. This was in our roadmap. So we've been developing this from 2017. It's not, it just happened overnight.
Well, this doesn't happen overnight.
Somebody said to us the other day, it looks like you've taken a car off the track and just taken the stickers off of it. And I think that's a perfect analogy for this car.